She was the daughter of a civil servant and was raised during one of the most difficult times Germany had ever experienced. As a young child, she witnessed the destruction and devastation of war could bring to the country. As she grew older, she saw her country become crippled under an enormous amount of debt due to the Treaty of Versailles and Germany's role in World War I. As a teenager, she recalled the first time she noticed that the Nazi influence was gaining power in Germany. She says, "The first time that I noticed the Nazis was in the winter of 1924 or the spring of 1925, when I was 15. I can still remember that the trees were bare when they drove through our street in a large open truck. That's when I saw the flag for the first time. They had on those brown shirts and the swastika flag was enormous. I then asked my father who they were. He was a staunch German nationalist, and he said, 'Those are fanatics, and they will never manage to take over power.'" Remembering how and why the Nazis were able to grab and maintain power, Ruth says, "Above all, it was the huge unemployment. I also was unemployed. Back then, the unemployed would be standing from the steps of the labor office down to the street just to collect a couple of things." I think that's how you pronounce that, no?
Yep.
But I never went there. I never collected any money. But afterward, once Hitler came to power, it was wonderful. Everybody had a job and there weren't any more unemployed people. They were happy to have a job, and the foodstuffs were cheaper and the wages were raised. After the initial sentiments of jubilation left, it was clear to many Germans, especially Ruth, that there was more to the Nazi regime than just revamping the economy. They had a far more sinister purpose. She says, "But after a while, it slowly became clear to me that Hitler was aiming at something. And then in 1938, the bomber planes of the German army flew over us, and we immediately knew that sooner or later war would break out." And for Ruth, this was the second time she would see war in her country. This time it seems the war took a far greater effect on her. In her own words, she says, "On May 23rd or 24th, 1943, when my son was just 3 months old, we were bombed out. Because of that, we were forced to leave Berlin, as I didn't have a home anymore." She goes on to explain that she became a vagabond and she went, not having a home or anywhere to stay until she found a farm that would give her and her family shelter. I didn't make a slide for her, but she also talks in the book that she noticed that there was quite a bit of racism between the Jews and Poles and stuff like that. And there was one guy that was at the farm that was staying with her that was Polish, and the farm owner just got mad one day and beat him and mangled his arm so he couldn't work anymore and stuff like that. And it was kind of the first time that she realized that, well, not the first time because it was during the war, but that the problem was as serious as it really was for Poles and Jews and other people in Germany. And then, like many Germans, Ruth Hildebrandt saw the Jews were being persecuted, but as she says in her own words, nobody dared to say anything. And after being asked if she could believe that the rumors about the Jews were true, or were being persecuted, because her husband actually worked at one of the prisons, I believe, and he came home and told her that he had heard that they had been gassed, but he wasn't sure. That's all that he was told. And she said that she couldn't say anything because if she did, that her husband would be killed and she'd be put in a concentration camp. And so it's kind of a good example that shows the fear tactics that were being used against average citizens to shut their mouths, because she knew about stuff, but she didn't know to the extent that it was happening. And she actually goes in and says that a lot of the soldiers that were on the trains with the Jews to drop them off at Auschwitz or Dachau and all that stuff were, they got off before the trains went into the camps, so they delivered the prisoners, and then when the trains left again, they got on their trains and left. So it was kind of a good example to see that, I guess, sadly how effective the Nazi regime was at hiding from a lot of people what they're actually doing. This is the quote that she ends her story with, but I thought it was pretty intense. It says, so once again she was asked if she could believe the rumors that she had heard about what was happening to the Jews, and she said that was possible, yes. With the Nazis, yes, most certainly. Because they, above all the SS, were rather brutal with everyone. And I thought that was really interesting because it just goes to show that, I mean, we all know that the Holocaust is with the Jews, and there's other people persecuted as well, but It was interesting to see the viewpoint of a German citizen that wasn't Jewish, wasn't Polish, wasn't any part of the minority, but her life was still affected greatly by the Holocaust and by World War II. But that's the last slide I have.